He's Hunter.
And he's Andrew.
And
And we're
we're good
good
boys.
boys. Something I wanted to jump into real quick. I was driving down the highway the other day, and as I was doing it, I live very close these days to like a small airport, like real small, like private planes, twin engines, that sort of thing. As I'm going down the highway, suddenly a helicopter shadow comes over my car, and it's a little scary. It felt like the scene in Goodfellas, R.I.P. Ray Liotta, but it's like the helicopter was probably, I don't know, I can't judge things, 40, 50 feet above me. Like it was really close because it was coming in for a landing down at the side. But like when you're driving and you feel the shadow come over you and you know what it is, just like, oh my God,
Did
it
you
feels
feel?
like paranoid.
Did you feel like you were in a chase scene?
Oh, I gripped the steering wheel, let me tell you.
Yeah. Start looking for blue and red lights
So I'm
flashing.
immediately looking like, okay, how do I maneuver this?
Yeah, right. Just looking for off ramps. Just blow through the guardrail like in Terminator 2.
So that was a new experience. Something I wanted to get into today that we briefly touched on a little while ago. In episode 1, we quickly discussed uh, the movies, the Shawshank Redemption, and the Green Mile. Just gave our thoughts. And what I thought would be really fun if you and I go back and forth and give our top 5 Stephen King adaptations. Because I sat down the other week and I'm like, oh my God, I know the cliche is Stephen King's written everything, but he really has. Like, there's so many properties you forget are original to him. So I figured it'd be good if you and I went and picked our top 5 movies. Now, I will clarify for people, this is top 5 films. This is not, TV miniseries, anything like that. So purely, out in theater films based on either a book or short story by Stephen King or something he was involved in. And as a little teaser, I would just say, neither Shawshank nor Green Mile made my top 5.
Then I feel I feel like my list is much more generic then. But we'll get to it.
What?
Also, I broke one of the rules you set just because I felt like it. So it's
You did a
still a
mini.
theme. I did a mini series, yeah.
That's not a movie.
I know, but I didn't want to do an honorable mention, so that's on my list. And the placement's gonna really frustrate you too.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Why don't you start us off with your number 5?
We're gonna get to that bridge a lot later than you would hope too. So
I feel I know it's coming. If it comes and I'm right, Kate, I'll let you know that if I predicted it, and you can take my word for it. But I have an idea. Why don't you start us off with your number 5?
you should write it down or text me.
Okay, I'm writing it down right now.
You write it down. Cool. You're gonna get it right too, you son of a bitch.
All right, it's written down.
Okay, so
Here, I'll even tear off a little piece of paper and fold it. Yeah. All right, setting that aside.
okay, beautiful. So this first one I think is going to surprise you a little bit. It's actually Gerald's Game.
Never seen it.
So
honestly, I won't even tell you what it's about. I've heard the title of the movie, don't know anything.
So that's why I liked it so much. So it popped up on my Netflix recommended one day. I was like, oh, this is interesting. The do you want me to go through the basic premise?
Go through the whole thing, please.
Okay, so essentially, this couple is trying to just like spice up their love life a little bit. They decided to, I believe, yeah, right. I believe stay at a friend's house. They have like a nice property, whatever. They're pretty well. What's that?
Is it in Maine?
I can't recall, but more likely than not, it's in Maine. Yeah. So they essentially get to this house, and things are going as planned. The man is you can tell he's hyper focused on the
Is he
sexual
real?
end. Yes. Yep. So he at a certain point he breaks out some handcuffs. Okay. And they have an argument while she's cuffed. There's you can tell that she's uncomfortable with being handcuffed. He calls her daddy, like I believe several times, and she's like, "Hey, dude, quit that shit. That's nonsense. Whatever." So he ends up having a heart attack.
Are you saying he calls her daddy, or he calls her daddy?
No. He refers to himself as daddy.
Oh, he refers to himself. Okay.
He doesn't call her daddy. That would be
Okay.
even stranger. But while she's handcuffed to the bed, he has a heart attack and keels over dead. So she's handcuffed to this bed, no escape.
Mhm.
And then throughout the movie, she has flashbacks to some childhood abuse, and you see why like the him referring to himself as daddy made her, incredibly uncomfortable. It goes through some of that. She has
What year was this made?
my guess would be 2016, 2017,
Okay,
maybe.
so that's a pretty recent movie.
Yeah, it's fairly recent. And the reason it cracked the list is it felt so fresh because I wasn't sure what I was like. I had no idea what I was getting into. So it was like, yeah, I went into it totally free and clear of trailers, anything like that. So she has, while she's tied up to the bed, she has a series of, I guess, fever dreams. And during one of these dreams, she sees this grotesque sort of figure sneak into her room, and she's locked up onto the bed, and she eventually ends up mutilating her hand to pull free so she doesn't, lay there and starve. She breaks free, she gets away. So the twist at the end is that grotesque figure that came in was actually a guy that was going around robbing graves, doing some weird, just some odd stuff. He had a birth defect, so he was grotesque.
This is a very Stephen King twist.
This twist was like, what? Because you're up to that point, you're like, oh, she's imagining a scary monster that's basically her facing her past.
Did it look scary?
What's that?
Did it look scary? Like, were you creeped out?
I was incredibly creeped out. And there's this scene where she's looking down this hallway and he's moving through like this house and he's slinking around. It's really odd, but this guy actually ends up sparing her. She doesn't realize it's a guy. She thinks it's all part of her imagination, part of this, hallucination.
Well, he sees her chained to the bed and that her boyfriend killed over and is like, oh, you got your own problems.
Yeah, right. He's like, oh, you're having a bad enough day. She's just like, hey, man, the key's over there. Can you just hand me that? No, but so she, I believe, it's been a while since I watched it, but I believe whenever she gets out, she interprets that as just a manifestation of childhood trauma, and she overcame her fear, right? So it turns out that he ended up being a real guy, and she basically confronts him in the courtroom, and it's like she came face to face with the fear she overcame. It was awesome because it was so I had no expectations going into it. It was just like, oh, let's hit this, and it turned out to be like a pretty great movie.
Are there any actors or actresses I would recognize, or any name brand talent, or?
Yes, two, and for some reason I totally am blanking on both of their names. But
are they the leads?
Yeah, the two leads. Well, the male lead, I guess he's the male lead. Gerald, he dies fairly shortly after the start of the movie, but he's incredibly recognizable. And then I can't recall her name either, but she's she's the big uh she's certainly the star of the movie.
Okay, I gotta say, for someone totally unfamiliar with it, that sounds like a pretty solid top 5 pick.
It's definitely worth checking out.
Okay. Uh, my top 5, my fifth choice is actually also a pretty modern Stephen King movie. It is It Chapter 1 from 2017.
I considered that.
I was so surprised how much I enjoyed the movie. And I mean, it's creepy to whatever, like, what you would want, like a popcorn movie to be at the theater, nothing really there. But I gotta say, the camaraderie and the chemistry and the friendship between all of the child actors was so well done. And particularly the little girl who played Beverly, she did such an excellent job uh, representing, the relationship with her and the abusive relationship with her father and her desire to be friends with the other boys and the love triangle that develops between her and the other two boys. I've never read a Stephen King book. I can't remember exactly all the names of the characters, but I was really, really impressed with how well they did as, a set, as a team. And it was just really enjoyable to see them either go on adventures or face the adversity of the evil clown. And which Skarsgård brother was that?
That's Bill Skarsgård.
Bill Skarsgård. Yeah, he did a good job as Pennywise. Good stuff. But yeah, mostly the kids. I was a really big fan of how well they did and how well the chemistry comes across in that movie.
Yeah, it seems to me that child actors are getting so much better.
Oh, so much better. I think it's just that 50 years ago they didn't give a shit.
I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it, I think another part of it too is there's just a wider pool of people. I think that's a big part of it. Like, because I'm imagining, never made a film, but I'm imagining that when a kid comes in with a look, you're like, yeah, that's it, that's the guy. We're good, we're set. That's who we want, and that's probably the end of it. That doesn't seem to be the case now. It seems like there's either a wide talent pool, or maybe filmmakers are just putting extra care into their casting of child actors.
I think it's both, and I think the other thing is why we didn't get great, because I think you didn't really get really good child actors until after 1990, and I think that's a big part, because up until recent decades we weren't really telling stories in Hollywood told from the perspective of children. We have so many movies, television show these days which come at life from the perspective of a 12, 13, 14-year-old. And those stories, as far as I know, were pretty much non-existent prior to 1990, or at least the 80s.
I think what's the exception to that is maybe the Goonies.
Well, that's 80s. So we're talking 80s John Hughes, style when you're getting into, like the teenage lifestyle. But yeah, prior to that, and even then, those kids were, older. We're talking 12-ish. But
yeah, that's true. Yep,
I was really impressed with them.
That's certainly a solid pick. It's I think as far as an adaptation goes, it's really good. It is.
Have you read any Stephen King books?
I was glancing over a second ago. I'm looking for it on my shelf. I don't know if I lent it out to somebody. It's actually the first Stephen King book I ever read, and it is so goddamn long. It's
like 800 pages.
Something like that. Yeah, it was probably like a 70-hour read. It was brutal, but
What other ones have you read, or would you not want to say at this time?
The Stand. I'm looking at my bookshelf. Yeah, The Stand. I read The Gunslinger, and it was cool, but I don't know. I never felt like picking up the sequels. I have the Tommyknocker sitting on my shelf, and that's gonna get cracked open eventually too. I've been on a Neil Gaiman kick, so I'm reading that, but we'll see.
All right.
But yeah, that was I really considered it chapter one. I also well we'll move further. Maybe we'll revisit.
Okay, but that
But
would have made your honorable mention list.
yeah, but if I had an honorable mentions list, yeah, it chapter one would have made it.
Okay.
Okay, so we're on number 4 on my list. I have The Shining.
Really?
I have The Shining at number 4.
Wow. Okay, I am surprised by that. Go
Yep.
on. What was your logic there?
So I really enjoy The Shining, but it seems, how do I put it? It seems like just what everybody would expect to be in any top 3 list, right? Um, I excellent movie. The acting in it's phenomenal. Every scene, it's incredible to me. What's incredible to me about The Shining is that every scene, even scenes that aren't outwardly horror, just invokes such an emotion of like creepy. Just everything's creepy in that movie, and I really respect that for like a horror movie. You have like just a almost a feeling of dread the whole time, like Shelley Duvall while she
Which he
was
had in real life.
like she had in real life while she was making the movie.
So it sounds like you made the decision to put it as number 4 instead a little higher just to subvert expectations.
No, I would never do that.
Okay. But I agree. The Shining is, I mean, it's an exceptional film. I mean, I would argue that it's out of all, it might be the best Stephen King adaptation if we're doing like objective filmmaking. And that's what separates
Without
it
a
from our top 5 personal favorite list. But yeah, The Shining,
absolutely.
excellent. Yeah, what you said. Performances are great. It's creepy. It's long, but it doesn't feel like it. Like you're happy to sit there and just let it come over you. Stephen King hated The Shining.
I know, and I never heard why. I know he hated it, but I never heard why.
2 reasons. One, he disagreed with a lot of the choices that Kubrick made, and he didn't think Kubrick was the right director to do it. I've heard partially because Kubrick in real life was an atheist, and just because of that and his just general manner, King believes that he didn't have the sort of in touch with the sort of mysticism that would require real adaptation of The Shining. Like, because there's so much more in the book going on than in the movie with little things that the whole hotel is sort of alive, that he just feels Kubrick didn't have it in him to bring forth.
Yeah, that.
Which is a really bullshit reason.
Yeah, like okay, man. I don't know. So a lot of people whenever they're talking about adaptations, they like to talk about sticking true to the source material. I am personally of like the opposite end of that. I think as soon as you decide to make an adaptation based on some other property, I think that work becomes yours to put your creative influence on. I think Stanley Kubrick can put his stamp on that. I think that the Shining movie I've never read The Shining, but I think that the movie, just from what I've seen, has the chops to stand away from the source material and be its own thing. And I don't know, maybe it's just it was just a Stephen King ism where he was like, "Yeah, I think this."
I have a completely ad hoc opinion when it comes to adaptations. My thought is just, well, is it better? If the source material is better and you diverge from it and it's worse, then you should have stuck to the source material. If you did something new and it's somehow better, then you did a great job not following the source material. It completely comes down to whether or not I like what you did, and that's the final verdict on it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I guess that, yeah. Well, I mean, if an adaptation sucks and they didn't follow the source material, obviously the first thing I'm going to say is they should have followed the source material. But yeah, I probably feel the same way.
And the second reason Stephen King didn't like it, which I think is a much more legitimate reason, is he strongly disagreed with the casting of Jack Nicholson. Because Jack Nicholson, both in that movie and pretty much any movie he's making around that time, whether, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or The Shining, the moment you see Jack Nicholson on screen, you know he's going to go nuts. The moment you see his face, you're like, this guy is a bomb waiting to go off. Where the whole point of the Shining book is that you're taking a very average father who has some troubles, but it's portraying his slow descent into madness. Whereas you do not get, Jack Nicholson is amazing in that movie, but you do not get slow descent into madness. You get this guy, it's just under the surface and he needs a reason.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just a little bit of isolation.
A little bit of push.
Yep, and he's over the line. So the question, I guess, is the adaptation that ended up being a sequel to The Shining. Did you watch Doctor Sleep?
I did not. I just saw so many bad reviews. I didn't want to. And that was also, is that over 3 hours?
It's a very long movie. So I think that Doctor Sleep was just fine. It wasn't exceptional. I really like Ewan McGregor, and he did well. So it was cool. And I like that like the Kingverse stuff. That's why I really wanted to get into the Dark Tower. But after reading The Gunslinger, like, it was good, but I didn't want to pick up the second book. So I really like I like the Kingverse stuff. Maybe it's MCU just tainting my views on things, but yeah, I enjoyed that.
Stephen King was able to make The Shining he wanted. There was a 3-part miniseries in the late 90s, which he was intimately involved in. Like, he wrote it. I think he even assisted with directing. It's absolute garbage. But, you know, it was like his vision of this is what The Shining should have been.
Well,
it's really bad.
Well, there's a reason he's an author and Stanley Kubrick makes movies.
Terrible acting. Just, it's quite bad. But it shows what he wants. It shows an average guy slow descent to madness, and he's like, "This is so much better than Jack Nicholson."
Yeah, just this guy I grabbed. Yeah. Well, there's a reason that he writes books and Kubrick made movies. So there you go. Yeah, right. Give me something to work with, Steve.
Stay in your lane, King.
Yeah. Right. All right, so let's hear what's number 4 on your list.
Oh, okay. I was like, sorry, I just got the order wrong in my head. My number 4 is Carrie, 1976.
Oh, cool.
Classic horror movie. It has been a few years since I've seen it, but I mean, Sissy Spacek is so good in that role. And I don't know, I think it's a pretty near perfect horror movie because we see the development and you get the side-by-side of, you know, the sheltered girl who's bullied at school with the classic frankly insane bullies that, you know, go above and beyond anything you would see in the real world.
Yeah.
Side by side with this strange girl who's, you know, developing these powers she doesn't understand and that her mother condemns her for. And then you get the climax where those two things meet in that amazing scene in the gym. It's, yeah, between the acting and just sort of the classicalism of it, of like, oh, this is old school 1970s horror, plus, you know, Stephen Kingisms. Like, I think it's such an excellent movie.
I agree with that. I dislike the remake.
I've only seen bits and pieces of the remake, but I agree. It's you can't remake it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, her mother in that movie, there has never been a character I can think of that is you hate to hate. You don't really even love to hate her. You're just like, oh, I hate her. She sucks.
I hate that she's on screen.
Yeah, I hate that she's on screen treating this poor girl this way. I want her gone. And you get so satisfied whenever that happens.
Oh, you get satisfied at the end, like even like at the you know, in the gym scene, you're like, everyone's been so terrible. You're happy when she goes nuts. Even it's like, oh, the teacher that was always nice to her, sure, kill her off too. It doesn't matter.
Yep, kill her with your mind. This is cool. You deserve it. Keep going.
You go, girl. You know.
Yas queen.
what is her power? Professor X.
Telekin
Yeah, we love
telekinesis.
we love a telekinetic queen.
A telekinetic queen. Telekinetic Queen Summer.
But yeah, excellent movie. I was very happy to put that as my number 4.
Very cool. So on to my number 3. We're gonna go with The Shawshank Redemption.
Okay. Go on.
Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm waiting for you to, we've touched on it briefly before. I'm waiting for you, to give your reasonings of why it's your number 3.
I have a feeling that it's also your number 3.
Oh, do you have a feeling?
I do.
I'd said explicitly beginning that neither Shawshank or Green Mile made my top 5 at all.
Yeah, I forgot about that. See, you're just trying to pull the wool over my eyes. You were trying to up front. So, as far as the story goes, first of all, no, we're not going to start with the story. We're going to start with Morgan Freeman's narration of all the events. It's just smooth like butter, as you expect, and it has the how do I want to put this? Whenever Morgan Freeman says, "I would like to tell you that the sisters never got to Andy," you're just like, "Oh no, they got to Andy! No, the sisters got to Andy!" He said,
Never
"Prison."
Andy again, and Boggs never walked again.
Exactly. It's great. That's why Shawshank Redemption's so great. Morgan Freeman's narration. The subplot with Brooks is one of the saddest subplots or plots in general. What's that?
Real tearjerker, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's so sad. I think that is actually the saddest part of that movie is Brooks' subplot. I think
Absolutely.
that him talking about how he misses Jake, his pet bird that he raised from a chick, to him just not being able to fit in with society after being so institutionalized. And you're like, oh, I wish he wouldn't have done it, but I totally understand why this old man killed himself. You get it. The scene where he's escaping, the scene where he's escaping
and the music comes in.
That's an excellent scene. The just that whole thing, that him smashing the rock into the sewage pipe, to the thunder. You see that he's lit up by the lightning. Him just crawling through, what is it? A mile of what's he say? A mile of
I thought it was
shit.
a river. Andy Dufresne crawled through a river of shit. And
Yeah.
On the other side.
Exactly. That's exactly what Morgan Freeman says. It's excellent, and I really enjoy that. If I think it falls into the category of just like, oh, this is a classic movie. I really enjoy it. Outside of that, there's really nothing that I dislike about the movie. The scene where he gets the record player and plays the music is super cool. You get the impression that Andy is so just he's very mentally tough. And I think that's just so cool to see somebody that everybody was underestimating whenever he came into prison end up being so tough. I think that's so cool.
I basically agree with everything you said. It is well, first off, it's a Stephen King staple. Like that is probably one of his best known, best adapted properties. And yeah, it's a really good movie with excellent scenes that are, you remember for a lifetime. I recommend that everyone watch it, but it didn't make my top 5 because one, there is quite a bit of schlock in it. Like there's a lot of schmutz, a lot of, like, oh, feel good, like, meant cheat, a lot of cheese. I don't know how many other ways to phrase this.
Can you give me an example?
Honestly, a good portion of it is the lighting, just how it looks, and you're like, the way this is kind of tempered is, I don't like the. not sure how else to explain this. It doesn't feel very real. It feels very put together to make me feel these things, which is not bad. There's a lot of scenes, like I agree, that when Brooks kills himself, that is one of the saddest, sequences in cinema. Morgan Freeman's narration, you're right, is probably the best part of the movie. And that's one of the things, I mean, it's actually going back, that's an adaptation choice that was a lot better than the source material. In the original book, he really is Irish. That's the thing. But they kept it where, in the movie, they kept it where, oh, he's now played by a black man, but they kept the line in of, probably because I'm Irish.
Yeah.
Why do they call it red? Like, that's great. But yeah, I don't know. The guy who plays Andy is a little too everyman for me. I didn't get nearly as much out of him as you get from Morgan Freeman or even as Brooks as like real characters. And I don't know. And the ending of like, you go and like when they go in the Mexico, like meet each other in Mexico, I'm like, okay, this is a bit much. Like, and again, I think every single person should see this movie and maybe rewatch it every decade. But I could never imagine myself right now sitting down to just watch Shawshank beginning to end. It wouldn't happen.
I've seen it too many times too as well. I agree with you there. I've the first time I watched Shawshank Redemption, I was probably a 10-year-old kid.
Same.
And probably have watched it on average once a year up until.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow, I've probably watched it beginning to end 3 or 4 times in my life.
So it was one of those ones that my dad growing up, if it was any of the Rocky movies, if it was Shawshank Redemption, or if it was Jaws, my dad constantly had it on the TV. So that's just, I think, how that ended up happening.
Yeah, I could watch Jaws every day. But that's a list for another time.
Yeah, right.
Our top 5 shark-based movies.
So you'll be surprised by my number 1. It's Sharknado. Sharknado is my number 1.
Oh, my number 1 is Deep Blue Sea.
Deep Blue Sea, nice. All right, what did you have?
Jaws, honorable mention.
Honorable mention, Jaws. Small film, 19. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, no, that's solid choice.
So what came in at 3 for you?
The Shining.
Okay.
Primarily for the reasons you chose. When I was thinking when you said like, it just sort of seems like a top 3 movie. Yeah, that's why it's in my top 3. It's I would say the best film on my list and probably either of our lists. And I'm like, it's so good. I would, it has to be my number 3. But that's because it's a great movie and everyone thinks it's a great movie. Whereas it can't be top 2 because it doesn't speak to me in a personal way,
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that The Shining, in any list of just top 50 films of all time, let's say, I think it cracks the top half of that in most lists. I think,
probably. I mean, horror movies get slighted a lot in those, but it should be.
Yeah, horror movies get slighted, but do psychological thrillers, because the Shining kind of tightropes that line, right?
It does, but I feel if they even bother to throw those in, it's the Hitchcock film they include. What's
Psycho?
Psycho, yeah. But yeah, so yeah. The Shining was my number 3. So honestly, 4-3. We were actually pretty close when it comes to judging that.
So from what you've initially said, we're going to deviate fairly hard on our top 2. So my number 2, open up the piece of paper.
Oh, okay. I guessed that the original It miniseries was your number 1.
You're wrong. It's 11th. You're pretty wrong. Totally wrong.
Okay. Maybe I don't know you as well as I think.
So I did consider that, and if so, it wouldn't have made number 2. But 11/22/63
11/22. Oh,
with
that
James
was the
Franco.
Amazon Prime original, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you shouldn't have chosen. It's a miniseries. How many episodes is that?
I believe 9.
Oh, that's a whole. That's not even a miniseries. That's a whole show.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed the show.
All right, Justified.
Justify. I will explain myself. So, first of all, James Franco, I think he does great in that.
Who does he
Um,
play?
he's the lead.
This is a
So
time travel one, right?
it's the time travel one. And I really just love the concept that time is your antagonist in that, and that time has it's almost this they describe it as if you try to do something that would drastically alter history, time sort of fights back. And I love that concept. The love story is one of the best love stories I've ever seen on TV, hands down, without question. Um, the I feel so the initial objective is for him to go back in time and prevent Kennedy from getting assassinated, but that kind of operates more as a setting, right? So he's in this time period with this goal, and he's sort of playing a game inside of this in in the confines of this goal. So he goes back in time. The portal he travels through is just a link to one spot in time. So if he goes back in, it resets everything. But the point in time it goes to, I believe, is in 1958. So he goes and he has to make money gambling. He ends up getting a job as a teacher because that's what he does in current time. Ends up falling in love, but he has to spend 5 years in the 50s and 60s to get to the point where he can actually prevent JFK from getting assassinated. And I believe initially he spends over a year there and ends up leaving and has to sort of start that whole process over again. It's just done really well. The concept of him fighting against time is super cool. Him falling in love in that time period. She ends up getting injured, so he leaves and comes back to save her. But every experience they've ever had, she doesn't know about, right? Because the time resets.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't end up going after her again. But when he goes back in time, she's being recognized for just some like teaching achievement sort of thing, something that's not too crazy. But he goes and he dances with this woman and has like makes this impression with her that just like it feels like it was true love that was stolen. And it's so sad. And I just really love the concept. I think they execute it really well. And it was a mini series, so I included it to bother you.
You succeeded.
Good. Okay, let's hear your number 2.
I will just say about that. I knew the plot. I heard that Amazon was developing it. I immediately became disinterested because it just went with well, we gotta stop Oswald. And I'm like, okay, way to spit in Oliver Stone's eye. All right, Stephen King, piece of shit. Way to carry water. But yeah, I don't really know anything about beyond that. I say it shouldn't count and that you only brought 4 to the table. That's my opinion.
So whenever we had our initial conversation and you were like, we said no miniseries, nothing, I was just like, son of a bitch. And then I was like, oh, well, I think if that had to be...
It's not even a miniseries. Miniseries are like 3 episodes.
Okay, it's a series.
Like
it's a TV series.
Storm of the Century. This is a straight up TV show.
Okay, it's a TV. It's one series. It's one season.
Okay, so it wasn't renewed. That doesn't mean it's not just a TV show.
Because what do you do after you just pick another arbitrary date and you're like, the guy found another portal. He's got to stop the assassination of he has to. He has to make sure that the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan went through.
See, that would have worked as a sequel series, but clearly not enough people agreed with you that it should be, get more screen time. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Maybe I should pitch that to Amazon. So what we need to do? Somebody Google the day that guy tried to shoot Reagan.
Franco.
Yeah. No. You what's his brother's name?
Shit. What is his name? I know who you mean.
Yeah. The other Franco that's in.
The lesser Franco.
The lesser Franco. He's in 21 Jump Street. He does a half decent job in that.
I didn't think he was that great in 21 Jump Street.
I said half decent. I didn't say great.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, I think that should be pitched to Amazon. So we do a follow-up with the lesser Franco brother. We make it free even without Prime. People will love it.
Oh, and they just released who was the Reagan attempted assassin? And
he made parole.
Jr. They just released John Hinckley Jr. You can have him in the show as a cameo appearance, because he's older now, but you have him playing a one-scene role as a little Easter egg for the audience.
Dude, my Google News feed came across. I was looking at the news at work, and across my Google News feed came that he packed out, or he filled up some arena.
Oh yeah, he plays music now. He plays guitar.
Yeah, that he totally felt good for him. He made the best out of that situation.
Perseverance is a quality you can admire in anybody.
Absolutely. My
number 2 is Christine from 1983.
I've never watched Christine.
Do you know what it is?
It's the car one, right?
It's the car one. I love this movie. I love how it looks. I love the characters. I love the acting. I love that the car becomes its own character. I love the music, that the car communicates through its radio what it's feeling. And it's just an exceptional movie because it starts out with you just seeing this car come out of Detroit on the assembly line as the movie plays Bad to the Bone, da-da-da-da, as it's just coming down. And it's, I don't know, they immediately start developing the car has a personality. It's alive. It doesn't explain why it's alive. There's no voodoo bullshit. There's a magic curse. There's nothing. It's just this car was made and it is alive and it wants respect. And that's it. No explanation needed, which I really appreciate that we don't need backstory. And it has, the car gets bought by, a teenage dweeb who, and I love the friendship between the main character, the dweeb, and his best friend, who's more like a jock. Because the movie does a great job of showing, oh no, they are real friends. The dweeb isn't a complete loser, and the jock isn't just a jock asshole. You can understand, they're sort of different strata in school, but they are old friends, and you really believe it. So I enjoy that. I enjoy the transformation of the dweeb into a tough guy with confidence as he develops the closer relationship with the car, because the car, it starts to turn you. You become more and more obsessed to it, and you don't want anyone else in your life besides the car. And it's really good. And there's so many great visuals, when the car goes on a killing spree against some of the bullies, and you see a guy just running, one of the bullies just running down the highway, and the car, which is just coming out of an explosion, it's a hell car driving by itself, completely on fire, just zooming towards you. There's a lot of great visuals in this movie. It's well acted. The soundtrack is great. It's everything about it. I find so enjoyable. It's an easy hour and a half, and it's a John Carpenter film.
I didn't know that.
I will actually say It is my favorite John Carpenter movie, even more than The Thing.
Really?
Really.
The Thing's one of my favorite movies ever made. So
I know.
that's a you're really
It's high
selling it.
praise. That's high praise. It's number 2 on my list, but it's my favorite John Carpenter movie. I think it's excellent.
Okay. I might give it a chance. Anytime I considered watching it, I was like, it's a killer car. That's so stupid. That's just what has come to my head. maybe
It's not like Mater comes to life. Like it's not like the car talks.
Yeah. So if the car talked, or so if the car talked, or if Mater killed, what would be worse? What would be better, and why?
If Mater killed in one of the Pixar Cars movies?
No, just a standalone thing where he happens to be a killer.
Oh. I mean, we've already discussed how much I love Larry the Cable Guy, so I got to go with that.
You think that'd be better? Okay.
I think that'd be, really be a breakout role for him.
An easy hour and a half.
But yeah, it's great. Like when he's in the car, it tries to, just kill people because it gets jealous of the owner having other relationships. Like they buy the car off of an old guy who's like, yeah, it was my brother's car, and he's selling it. And it's like, till my brother died, and and then the best friend Jock he's like, hey, what's wrong with that car? Why'd you sell it to him? And he's like, oh, well, my brother, he was a mean son of a bitch. He'd take on the world if anyone ever got between him and Christine. Also, I love the name of the car. I love the name Christine as the red car. That's perfect. He's just like, yeah, I told him to get rid of it after his daughter choked in it. And then it turns out his wife committed suicide in it, and then his brother died in a car accident. Like it's like the car, it
Consumes.
Yeah, it's well, not literally consumed, but yeah, it's an evil thing. It's an almost demonic force that does fall genuinely in love with its owner. Like when the dweeb is like, the car gets jealous of the dweeb and his girlfriend being together, and he goes in and he apologizes, like sitting in the car to it, and the radio comes on, and I forget what song it is. It's not this song, but it would be the modern equivalent to "And I Will Always Love You." Like when that just comes on the radio and just expresses itself, it's really good. It's a fun movie.
That's pretty cool. I like that concept. So I'll give that a shot. You sold it really well. It's just it's so hard for me to take a killer car seriously.
Like I said, they do it well because they don't try to give you a bullshit explanation of this is how it happened. All you need to know is it did.
That's good. If they tried to provide any kind of explanation, it'd be like, dumb.
Yeah.
Why would you possess a car?
Nope, it came off the assembly line evil. That's all.
Some are just made that way. All right.
So what made it the top of the list?
Number 1, The Green Mile. I just think the story I think is so unique. It's so creative. John Coffey, you feel so much sympathy for him. You feel like literally like one of God's angels. It is even too good to live in the world, and that's I think just the emotion that, like, if there was somebody that has not seen The Green Mile, I think there could be such emotion in the first watch where you're like, that is so crazy, like such a crazy story, and that's just such a good human being that's being treated so unfairly. It's just, I think, excellent. I think the story, its story is incredible. All of the characters, I think there's the perfect number of characters. I think they're all unique. I think they all bring exactly what they should to the table. And yeah, I love Green Mile.
Yeah, I'll keep my comments brief because we sort of discussed this previously at length. The primary concept, which I love, which is the how he's punished at the end for destroying one of God's, miracles, which I think is concept-wise the best part of that movie. But yeah, it's a great watch. Uh, Michael Clark Duncan, excellent performance. Tom Hanks is great. I do think it is a better movie than Shawshank Redemption. I enjoy The Green Mile. It's a great movie. If I have any criticism, maybe still a little too long, a little too schmaltzy at parts, but not nearly as much as Shawshank. If I were going to have an honorable mention, it would be Green Mile. It didn't make the list just because I think my top five, I enjoy all of them a little bit more. But yeah, that's a very, and it's also very much a Stephen King movie.
For sure. It's an off the wall story. It's any he does such unique stuff where you can just tell, like, yeah, this is his stamp that's on it. This
Oh yeah, all Stephen King's best movies are concept movies.
Pet Cemetery, Green Mile, those sorts of things. Yeah, I agree with that. So what ended up taking your top spot?
My top spot is Pet Cemetery from 1989.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I that's an awesome movie.
It is a phenomenal movie. I honestly think it's Stephen King's best concept because it presents every single person with the idea of you are grief stricken if you have just lost a child or a loved one. Would you really do anything to bring them back? What would you do in that circumstance? Would you violate the laws of nature or laws of God to do this? How far will grief take you? Like, it is such an amazing concept, and I think it's executed pretty well. I think it's such a watchable movie. It's such a rewatchable movie. And that has such its own style to it. I mean, Fred Gwynne, you really can't get better. I mean, endlessly quotable, mostly because of Fred Gwynne. Trying to remember what the character's name is that he plays. He's the next door neighbor.
Yeah, he has the. I'm waiting for you to try to do a Fred Gwynne voice. I want you to tell me not to do something because the consequences will be dire. Don't leave me hanging on this one. You have to do it.
I won't. Yeah, it takes a build up. Well now, Lewis, the soil of a man's heart, stonier. Man plants what he can, and he grows it. It's hard to keep a secret. Ground's gone sour.
That's pretty good, actually.
I think that's pretty decent. Ground's gone sour. The Micmac Indians, they knew that. That's why they stopped using this burial ground. That's a pet cemetery.
So you started off very much Sean Connery, and then you brought it back in. I was so nervous at first. I was like, oh no. Oh no, he's going 007.
But I love that movie. Trying to think of it, oh my god, the flashback scene, where it's talking about Timmy Baterman and his dad, who brought him back from the dead at the end of World War II, and then they all go to his house and they will burn him out. I mean, and I'm just like, it's the one time where a movie can really be like, get me to be like, yeah, the mob's right. We really need some mob justice right now. It's the only way this can happen. This is, you've done something so unnatural. We got to take it into our own hands. This is the only way.
Without a doubt. Did you watch the remake?
I've seen most of the good scenes, but I've not sat down and watched it to beginning to end. There are a couple scenes in there which I think are great. I think it was a really ingenious idea to make it the daughter instead of the little boy. That was very smart when it comes to remakes. But it's certainly not as good as the original. The actors not as good, but I don't know. What did you think?
I think that was the second movie that Katie and I ever saw in theaters together. Um, I don't remember disliking it, but I don't remember loving it. I thought it was just from when I think about it, it was just
Have
like,
you
yeah,
seen
that's
the original before that?
yeah, of course. I just remember thinking like, yes, that was something I watched. It was fine, but I think that it wasn't egregious. I think that
No, it wasn't.
I think they did a much better job with the Pet Cemetery remake than they did with the Carrie remake.
Absolutely. And speaking of child actors, like we were before, that little boy in the original, Gage, phenomenal child actor. That kid is like 2, and he's nailing these lines.
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, last quote. Sometimes dead is better.
That was your best one.
Okay, there you go.
One more thing on Pet Cemetery though. When I watched the original for the first time, I was staying over at my childhood friend's house, and it scared me half to death. It was so.
Zelda?
What's that?
Was it Zelda, the sister? Or what part scared you to death?
The concept.
Oh, yeah.
The concept scared me to death. I think that I recently had a dog that died too, and I think that it threw threw an extra bit of something in there too. But it
Would
was
you bury your dog in the pet cemetery? Just like the old guy did in the original. And the dogs go, Spock came back. Wasn't quite the same dog that I remember. And the mom screams like, come get your dog. He stinks of the ground you buried him in. Which very much a Stephen King line, but still a great line. It's just like a reminder of, these things come back, and not only are they evil or like not possessed by what you buried, but like they do smell like death. They smell of the sour earth that you buried them in. And that's something I thought the new one actually did pretty well, getting that across. Yeah, I love that. I love the concept of Zelda, that she comes back for revenge, like through the body. Yeah, there's so many good things in that movie. Have you read the book?
I have not.
Neither have I. I don't think I would, but I hear it's pretty good. There's some substantial changes from the book to movie, especially when it comes to Gage and what he's like when he comes back. Apparently in the book when he comes back, it's a little boy, and he still speaks in the voice of a little boy, but he talks like a grown-up, like in full sentences.
Oh.
And it's creepy in the book from what I hear, but you couldn't do that in a movie without it being hilarious.
Oh, it would be so fun. Well, the kid probably couldn't do the line, right?
No, certainly, but also it'd be ridiculous. And also the content, like it comes back, and when it kills, I really hate that I can't remember the character's name. I can only remember Fred Gwynn. Shit. Anyway, so in the book, he has a wife and who dies partway through, and it's sort of, they sort of become grandparents, supplemental grandparents to the kids in the book, and that's how that relationship develops. It's not just like the random guy next door, but
yeah.
They do that. She dies halfway through, and he confides to Lewis at one point that he had affairs early on in his marriage and that sort of stuff. And Gage comes back and comes to kill him, but Gage is talking about like it's this little boy with a knife, but he's speaking full sentences in this high pitched voice, child voice, and he's telling him as he's about to kill him, like, "Oh, she fucked all your friends. Do you know that? She liked it in her ass the most. They used to sit in your bed and laugh at you." Like, those are lines from the book that this little kid is saying to this old man.
Oh my God.
Hell with me. She liked it in her ass the most. Like, that was the original book.
Jeez. Well, it sounds like the
some things are left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. Maybe I'll give the book a shot. It sounds compelling.
Yeah, great movie. Very happy to have that as my number one. Yeah, Stephen King classic, and Hey, I mean, I would watch that all the time. I actually only watched it for the first time like a year ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I watched it for the first time when I was like 11. So yeah, it's I haven't watched it for a long while though. It's worth a rewatch. I certainly haven't watched it since I watched the remake, so I should definitely give it a shot. That and Christine. I do
Yeah,
want to
you
try
gotta give
out
them a
Christine.
shot. They're both on Netflix. I recommend. And I will try and check out Gerald's game.
Yeah, I of everything that's on my list, I would actually recommend that one the most. Um, I just think it's very much a Stephen King story. It's cool concept. Unfortunately, you know the twist now, but you'll still.
I think I'll still enjoy the visuals.
I think you will. Yeah, I think you'll still enjoy it.
Cool. Well, we both got something on our watch list, and yeah, sometimes better is better.